Today we are going to talk about a recently released suspenseful film called The Legend of the Blue Sky, starring Christian Bale, who has won multiple Oscars, as the male lead. This film is adapted from the best-selling novel of the same name worldwide. With a good script and actors, don't miss out on such a film. The story takes place in Hudson, New York in 1830. As soon as the male protagonist Rand returned home, he saw the commander of West Point coming to visit him. Through conversation, it was learned that a mysterious murder had occurred in the school. In order to catch the culprit as soon as possible, the school thought of the somewhat famous detective Rand. Rand didn't hesitate after listening and agreed on the spot. Given the urgency of the sudden incident, they immediately boarded the carriage and began their journey to school. It's not very far from Rand's house to school, and after 10 minutes, I arrived at the renowned Schilling Military Academy. Speaking of Rand, his current situation is actually quite tragic. His wife passed away due to illness 3 years ago, and the daughter he left behind also opposed suicide recently. Entering the medical room of the school, Rand saw the victim's body, and then the school doctor described the process of the case. The night before yesterday, a student named Iron Egg secretly went out and was found hanging by the river the next day. It is terrifying that the body was just transported back to school and its heart was dug up that night. Rand felt lost upon hearing this and flipped through the body to search for clues. Judging from the marks on his neck, it was evident that the deceased had undergone intense resistance and suffered an 8-centimeter laceration in the brain, indicating that the deceased had been hit by a blunt object before. It was clear that the student had been hanged after being injured by a blunt object. But why would someone dig out their heart? If the person who dug the heart is the murderer, why wait for the body to be transported back to school before digging? Continuing to examine the cut edge with doubts, it can be seen that the other party has a certain anatomical foundation. Breaking open the victim's tightly clenched palm, a missing note appeared before my eyes. Subsequently, Rand arrived at the crime scene, examined and questioned the first eyewitness, but the information he received was of no reference value, which left him confused. The unimaginable case is like a bomb, making the whole school anxious and uneasy. Find the student responsible for guarding the body that day, Rand, and inquire about the details before the heart was dug out. The student said he was supposed to withdraw from night duty, but an officer asked him to leave early in the middle of the night. Rand asked the officer who he was and what he looked like. The student said it was too dark to see clearly, only remembering that the officer's left shoulder badge had no stripes. After finishing the day's investigation, Rand went to a nearby tavern to relax. The landlady here was his lover, and he was told to ask Xiaopa, who often frequented, about it. Xiaopa is not only a student colleague at West Point Military Academy, but also a somewhat famous poet. The two of them fell in love at first sight and had a great conversation. As a classmate of the deceased Iron Egg, Xiaopa naturally knows some rumors. He suggested that Rand investigate his friend before Iron Egg, who reportedly went their separate ways for some reason. The next day, Rand approached Iron Egg's former friend and asked him a question. The friend said that Iron Egg had met some bad students, so he cut off his robe and cut off his loyalty, and never had any further contact. Rand asked those bad students who they were, but they said they had already forgotten. Such an answer was obviously unwilling to cooperate anymore. Later, Rand privately found Xiaopa and invited him to become his secret partner. In this way, we can delve deeper into the students and uncover the most authentic and effective clues for solving cases. Xiaopa readily agreed upon hearing this. That evening, Rand took out a note for Xiaopa to analyze, and Xiaopa lived up to his expectations and quickly came to a conclusion. However, this still cannot serve as a breakthrough point for the case, but one thing is certain, which is that Poe has the same investigative talent as Rand, which also indicates that Rand did not misjudge anyone. The next day, Xiaopa was writing his favorite poetry at school when he got up and saw a beautiful figure outside the window. This was the daughter of the school doctor, Mori. Just at a glance, Xiaopa fell deeply in love with her. Coincidentally, that evening, the school doctor invited Xiaopa's class to visit and enjoy his daughter Jasmine's piano playing, which made Xiaopa even more unable to extricate himself. At the same time, a student named Steelegg was also watching, and it turned out that he also liked Mori. Before leaving, the little lady mustered up the courage to date Mori, but unexpectedly, the other party agreed directly. The next day, the little lady took Molly on a date outside. They chatted very happily. After sitting for a while and preparing to leave, Molly suddenly fell to the ground and trembled. It turned out that he had a serious epilepsy. After Xiaopa anxiously shouted and called for help, Jasmine finally regained her normal state. At the same time, several days had already passed, but the case had not made any progress. At this moment, Rand thought about how the excavated heart would be preserved, and after much thought, only ice cubes could possibly be preserved. So Rand left a note for Xiaopa, asking him to explore together in the school's ice room later. Not long after, Rand arrived at the place first, and it seemed that the ice chamber here was not managed by anyone. After entering the room and exploring for a while, Rand quickly discovered useful clues. There is a circle with a triangle drawn in the basement, and upon closer observation, it feels like a ritual. At this moment, Xiaopa also rushed over. Rand said he saw dried blood and sixth sense told him that the truth was about to surface. After leaving the ice chamber, Rand took Xiaopa to meet a mystical professor and saw the graphics Rand drew. The professor said it was a trap magic that could obtain immortality. Afterwards, I took out a magic book that recorded the detailed casting process, which mentioned that 2 hearts must be used to complete 2 traps each. Rand was a bit confused after hearing this. Does anyone want to use it to achieve eternal life? At a time when the shocking case was at a loss, the little lady discovered a major clue in school. The son of the school doctor, Marquis, seemed to be very interested in mysticism. This matter quickly spread to Randall, and both of them realized that the school doctor's family may be suspected. The next day, the school held a grand funeral for Iron Egg, and all the students and officers of the company were present. At the end, Iron Egg's mother stopped Rand and handed over his son's diary. He said he found it at home and hoped it would be useful for solving the case. Opening the diary, the densely packed text makes it impossible to read what is written clearly. On the way back, Rand met the school doctor and his wife. After a simple courtesy, the school doctor's wife invited him to sit at home tonight. Rand felt honored and thought in his heart that he could go and inquire about the situation. Rand, who returned home, soaked Iron Egg's diary in water and then pasted it on the glass. After a few seconds, the text on the paper gradually separated. After comparative analysis, he found a useful clue. That evening, Rand brought Xiaopa to the school doctor's house as a guest, and the school doctor warmly prepared a sumptuous dinner. After dinner, while everyone was in the living room, Rand picked up a candle to visit Kyoichi's home. Coincidentally, he found a military uniform on the hanger, and his left shoulder was surprisingly without any markings. Rand immediately confirmed that there was definitely a problem with the school doctor's family. The next day, after Rand woke up, he received an urgent notice that the student's steel egg in the school had gone missing. Shortly thereafter, everyone began a carpet search around them, and after searching without leaving any blind spots, they finally found a steel egg on a tree. Everyone was shocked in the same place. The steel egg was hung to death by a rope, and the heart was even dug away by someone. Who the hell is the culprit? Rand seems to know the answer, the son of the school doctor. I feel like someone is looking at me. It turns out that Xiaopa is staring at him intently. After returning, the school doctor conducted an autopsy on the body and found that the method of taking the heart this time was somewhat clumsy, and the incision was not as skilled as the first time. At this moment, the commander was furious and urged Rand to quickly find the culprit. Rand said he already guessed who did it. Just finished dealing with the steel ball, everyone found that the trainee diamond was also missing. After Rand checked, he found out that he had taken his plainclothes with him. According to Iron Egg's diary, both Steel Egg and Diamond are his friends. Based on this judgment, Diamond must have been afraid that the next one would be him, so he chose to escape early. That evening, the little lady came to Jasmine's house and said she had written a poem for him. The content of the poem is as follows.
Endless night caught her then in its slurry, shrouding all but her pale blue eye. Darkest night, black with hell, charneled fury, leaving only that deathly blue eye.
I guess Jasmine understood, but impersonation means she didn't understand. After Jasmine asked Xiaopa a question.
Remember when you said you'd do anything for me?
Subsequently, in the military room near the school, an ancient sacrificial magic was being performed. Jasmine was holding a heart and reciting words, while beside him lay the unconscious little brother Marquis who was helping. Their mother also dipped in one side and coordinated to command Jasmine to paint the shape with fresh blood. The brother drew a circle around the heart of Xiaopa. It is obvious that this family is preparing to dig out the heart of Xiaopa and complete a sacrificial magic that can obtain eternal life. At the same time, Rand hurriedly arrived at Xiujio's house and subjected him to a soul torture. Xiaoyi couldn't resist the opponent's momentum, and within a few words, he revealed the truth. Originally, her daughter was diagnosed with epilepsy and only had 3 months left to live. She was forced to find the legendary sacrificial magic, which led to the murder of Iron Egg. On the other side, Marquis picked up the knife and Jasmine leaned down to say a word to Poe.
Is the ultimate expression of...
After finishing these words, start casting traps. As the incantation was spoken, the mother also recited it along with her. Marquis pressed the tip of his knife towards the small slope and was about to pull out his heart in the next second. At this critical moment, Rand arrived inside in time. Startled, Jasmine flipped over the candlestick with the knife and, while facing Rand, quietly caught fire behind her. Rand persuaded them to lay down their weapons, and Marquis became emotionally agitated, vowing to resist to the death. Rand had no choice but to suddenly raise an issue and immediately got into a fight with the other party. At this moment, Jasmine wanted to continue her sacrifice, but the merciless fire had already burned to her side. Marquis and her mother quickly checked, and Moore and Rand took the opportunity to drag away Xiaopa. As the fire was about to burn down the entire house, Rand approached and dragged away the wife of the school doctor. Just after they left, a collapse occurred immediately after. Marquis and Jasmine were buried in the sea of fire like this, and Xiaopa also lost his favorite. A farce ultimately ended tragically and hastily. The next day, the little lady received effective treatment, and the truth of the murder case was finally revealed. The Shelby family brutally killed Iron Egg and Steel Egg for Jasmine. After experiencing all of this, Rand had a dream. After bidding farewell to the school principal, he decided to go home and rest well. Seeing this, it seems that the story has come to a successful end, but no one could have imagined that there is another layer of truth behind the entire case. A few days later, Xiaopa arrived at Rand's residence. He first thanked Rand for his life-saving kindness, and then expressed his conjecture. It turned out that he found that the note left by the Iron Egg was the same as the note left by Rand. In addition, Xiaopa learned from Rand's lover that Rand's daughter was bullied by 3 hooligans on her way home from a tavern a while ago. From then on, she became depressed and couldn't bear it anymore. One day, she chose to jump off a cliff. Soon after, a series of murders occurred at the school. In summary, it must be suspected that Rand is also a murderer. Rand didn't hide anything after listening, and directly confessed to the final truth of the murder case. His daughter was indeed bullied on her way home, and those 3 hooligans were Iron Egg, Steel Egg, and Diamond. Don't! Since his daughter jumped off the cliff, Rand's heart has been torn apart and he wants to go on the road together. However, he is not willing to let the 3 beasts that hurt his daughter be alive. So he followed the weapon number plate that his daughter once grabbed and found Iron Egg, a student at West Point Military Academy. He then had his lover deliver a letter to deceive Iron Egg, and then forced him by the lake to ask who else was there. At this moment, someone passed by and Rand had to hang him in advance. The next day, Iron Egg's body was discovered, and the school coincidentally thought of letting Rand investigate this case. Upon arriving at school, Rand learned that Iron Egg's heart had been dug out. He was puzzled and began an investigation, quickly discovering that the school doctor's family was setting a trap. Marquis once disguised himself as an officer to deceive the duty officer, and then professionally took Iron Egg's heart. This is when Rand learned from Iron Egg's diary that the other 2 people were Iron Egg and Diamond. So he schemed and killed Iron Egg, pretending to dig out his heart and forging the same technique as killing Iron Egg. The reason why the technique doesn't seem proficient is that Rand is not good at anatomy at all. Because Jasmine was eager to complete the other half of the trap, he used Xiaopa's love for himself to prepare to take action, and all of this provided perfect cover for Rand, allowing him to push the murder case onto the Shelby family. As for the leakage of the diamond, Rand no longer plans to pursue it because he knows that the diamond will spend the rest of his life in fear. After finishing all of this, Rand handed the note to Xiaopa, stating that he could go and report himself. Xiaopa knew that once it was confirmed that Rand was the murderer, it would inevitably be a cruel death gallows. After much contemplation, he chose to burn the note and silently pushed the door away. Perhaps he sympathized with Rand, or perhaps he believed that this was the perfect ending. Unfortunately, he will never be able to become friends with Rand again, and from then on, the 2 will also become strangers. Later, Rand arrived alone at his daughter's cliff jumping place, took out her favorite headscarf and ribbon, and glanced at the lonely world without relatives. He whispered, "Press to my love." To avoid missing out on more exciting movies, please click subscribe.